senior officials, secretaries and officials from 19 other ministries and departments that have joined us, representatives of different companies representing those who are a part of the PLI program, SPECS program, MSIPS program, and other electronics manufacturing programs of Government of India. Similarly, the experts from the digital economy sector of Government of India, of the digital economy sector. Ladies and gentlemen, a very warm welcome to all the esteemed guests on the release of the vision document for $300 billion sustained electronics manufacturing and exports by 2026. This vision document has been put together by the ministry and the industry together as we aim to achieve what is indeed a very daunting task. Today, electronics manufacturing at almost $75 billion has grown to that extent with a sustained performance of 17% CAGR over last 5 years. This is despite COVID also, where electronics manufacturing not just retained its momentum, but was able to do despite the challenges. In fact, electronics manufacturing companies were among the first ones to immediately set the COVID protocols and align their manufacturing and set standards for others also. Hopefully that era is behind us. In the second wave of the COVID and now in the present circumstances also, we have had stability in manufacturing despite all the challenges around us. The vision document that is being presented today by the industry, this provides a complete strategy for transforming India into the global hub for electronics manufacturing and exports, so that India's share in global value chains also keeps on increasing. We had a similar program being done almost 3 months back, where specifically India's share in the global value chains and in the aggregate value chains was elaborated in conjunction with the industry. We will be looking at the way forward as we talk about the vision and policy measures and a very strong and consistent dialogue between industry and government in order to take this forward. So without further ado, may I now request Mr. Pankaj Mohindru, Chairman of India Cellular and Electronics Association, which is the apex industry body representing the electronic sector in India and which is specifically focused on mobile manufacturing, but now is looking at all of electronics, and who has played a stellar role in putting this report together, to kindly give a presentation on the report. Over to you, Mr. Mohindru.
Just a moment. Good morning, Honorable Minister Ashwini ji, Honorable MOS Rajiv Chandrasekhar ji, Secretary Saab Ajay Sani ji. I am also very happy to see Anurag Jain ji here, who has been our stellar partner in his earlier role in the Prime Minister's office. And when we were about at the takeoff stage, he put a lot of things together for us. And welcome, Anurag ji. And to my colleagues from the industry, welcome. Sir, the subject, which is the $300 billion sustainable electronics, in the current state of play, it takes one's breath away because it's a massive increase. And the mission 300 billion stresses on the fact that this is a mission which has been put together by MITI with the complete support, understanding, and a very vigorous action from the industry. The opportunity is very, very large, and the India vision is based on the fact that it is one of the largest industries in the world. In fact, it's a $2.9 trillion industry. It's almost equal to India's economy size. And COVID-19 has further strengthened this industry because of the tremendous support which digitization gave to the world economy and the Indian economy. And the demand, we expect that it is going to grow steadily and is going to be a major economic driver across the globe. the six key sectors in this huge global industry is mobile phones, which is at 540 billion dollars, IT hardware at 210 billion dollars, and wearables, etc., at 143, and so on. The vision of the Honorable Prime Minister, which is a 5 trillion GDP by 25-26, has two major pillars, which will be driven by mighty. One is the $1 trillion digital economy and the $1 trillion exports, out of which $600 billion necessarily will be exports of goods, merchandise, and with the $120 billion electronic exports out of that, which is the aim out of this $300 billion electronic manufacturing. Electronics will become one of the three top categories, and that is not the end, it's the semi-final. Sir, we have always, whenever there has been all of government approach, as Anurag ji would remember in 2017, when there was a major challenge facing the industry, and the Prime Minister office brought everybody together, and we worked very successfully on coming up with a formulation which helped us. Then again in 2019, the entire government got together when the PLI, the first pioneering PLI, was conceptualized, and the results are only there to watch. The GVCs, we have already completed that in the Vision 1, which is necessarily, we understand that GVCs will build competitiveness and a massive scale. In fact, a very large part of this $300 billion will be led by GVCs. They will build competitiveness and scale for India. The important thing is that the $300 billion is that we'll have to shift a lot of sub-assembly and the component ecosystem to India also, in addition to the fact that the engine of growth will be the $300 billion finished product, which is the CBUs. Number 4, the nurturing of Indian champion companies, local R&D and design. This is, I think, one of the most important pillars of our progress. I will take this in more detail later. And the PLI, etc., supports us today because it mitigates disabilities, but India will have to work very, very diligently in the next 4 or 5 years to bring disabilities, remove disabilities in various sectors. We are currently undertaking chapter 2 of version 2 of our earlier disability report, which became quite a landmark report, and we will present the state of play now and what are the lessons learned in the last 3 years. Sustainable manufacturing sounds so nice and so wonderful. What will it lead to? And what will it come out of? Scale, a very large scale, which will happen when we climb from 75 to 300 billion. Strong competitiveness, one of the most participating ranking export for the country, massive job creation, large scale FDI has to necessarily be brought in to achieve these 300 billions, because GVCs are the most important part of this Vision 300 billion. It is eco-friendly. Build Indian champions, which is a very critical element of this semi-final of our transition to a very large electronic industry. And last but not the least, massive domestic value addition, aggregate domestic value addition. I remember that song, "You Take My Breath Away." These numbers actually take your breath away, but the very vigorous support and activity which we have seen with the new leadership in the last 6 months plus. I have never witnessed this in the last 20 years in our interaction with the government. It has actually taken our breath away. It has been a very, very proactive leadership, and the level of engagement is absolutely par excellence. The the domestic market has to grow to $180 billion from here, which is 2.2 times in the next 5 years. And export market has to grow 10.3 times, which after this year's base, which will is likely to be 15 and a half billion dollars, it will be CAGR of 45% per year. The major products which will make this happen, mobile phones, there are tailwinds. We have grown 1100% in mobile phones in the last 5, 6 years. And nobody is resting on these laurels. It's quite satisfactory growth till now. And now we have to grow 4 times to $126 billion. IT hardware, which has been eluding us till now. There is already a PLI which is been partly successful, and something is needs to be recast to achieve this $25 billion. Consumer electronics and so on. There is a deep thought in all these verticals and schemes and policies and actions for all these have to be brought together. Next. Exports will be the most critical because, as you saw, the domestic market is already slated to grow. Of course, there are actions required to build the domestic market also, but exports, and this is the major growth, as you see, is mobile phones and IT hardware, and also the other segments growing from, say, $10 billion. We will be achieving approximately 15 this year. These are 2021 numbers. And the growth to $100 to $130 billion will ensure that we achieve this $120 billion of growth. The key role of Indian champions. Now, I'll take a minute to give the whole thought how this thought got built up. When the electronic manufacturing shifted from United States and Europe to the East, it shifted to many countries like Japan, Korea, Taiwan, Philippines was also one of these countries, and Malaysia, Thailand, etc. And then China. You'll notice that all these countries where manufacturing has sustained have very solid national champions which became global champions later. Philippines is an example where there was very large electronic manufacturing there, but it has virtually disappeared because the country did not nurture and build national champions. So the beginning of the policy decisions to build national champions was the differentiated PLI scheme, where under $200 we were able to secure a position for the national champions. So what they require now is strong budgetary support for R&D, design, and how to build scale. This will help them recover and secure domestic market share. The example of the Indian champions, the milk companies, about 5 years back or 4 years back, they were responsible for 40 to 45% of the volume sales in mobile phones, which has drastically come down. And there is resolve to build domestic champions to scale. And once all these actions happen, then these national champions will build massive scale, and particularly in the entry-level segment, they will be able to achieve competitiveness and occupy the under $200 segment across the world. The challenges, the current challenges, and we are very sure that these challenges, with this deep understanding and very vigorous leadership, we'll be able to achieve, we will be able to overcome it. And I think this all government coming together and supporting the industry, which will happen, we are sure, we will be able to achieve it. The cost increase vis-a-vis China and Vietnam, I mentioned that earlier. We are we have started working on a report to update what are the disabilities we are facing, and how the government of India and state governments will work together to improve the situation here. And I think next 4 or 5 years we will be a competitive nation. Our component system, sub-assembly system is in early stage. In some of the industries, verticals like IT hardware, we are still a CBU import kind of a nation, and that is something we have to overcome. Ease of doing business, we are working on also bringing our, and I think technology is great what is required. India has taken up this challenge of improving EOD, and we are very eager to provide the updated situation for the state and the center, where we feel that we need to improve constantly. Uh, Increased competitiveness. Recently come out with a report on tariffs. Uh, this old thinking that we have, import manufacturer, I think this for all times to come. There are legacy issues, tax issues, where the taxes were imposed out of the PMP structure, and I think that is something we need to fix. Occasional regulatory uncertainty. Our request to the Department of Revenue is that uh, there is there are occasions when uncertainty crops up, and a regular dialogue of all of government is very important to see that industry's confidence, which is so high at the moment, uh, continues to be sustained. I'll come to the end of the presentation, which are the policy recommendation. Uh, the first, the ease of doing business, cost of doing business, scale and competitiveness via incentives, and we have to see that constantly lower tariffs and addressing of the cost disabilities. Uh, the second point is a very important point where India has never done mass scale manufacturing where there are 40,000 to 100,000 workers under one roof, under one factory. Now, this is a critical factor to see that we achieve what we have set out to do. This is this is an industry where SMEs, MSMEs are in the third tier and fourth tier, but the engine of growth are always the very large plants. Power at less than 5 rupees a unit is necessary to make us competitive with China and Vietnam. Uh, Tariffs should not be imposed unless there is consultation between IT, DOR, and the industry, and that's a very earnest request and a recommendation. Shifting and strengthening the ecosystem. I think we need to move the GVCs and their critical manufacturers to India to reduce import dependence. So the policy framework as far as our neighbor is concerned has to be crystal clear. Then development of technical capabilities among Indian champions via JVs, technology transfer is also something very important, which will help us to nourish and make these fledgling companies into champion companies. Uh, the PLIs have to be constantly reviewed, and in some of the sectors, PLI schemes here in levels, you see the industry looking for a scheme to go to a different level. And in the IT hardware, I think we need to have a review, and I'm sure this will happen very soon. The timely disbursement of all incentives by Government of India and state governments is also a very critical element in making this happen. Industry financing at nominal rates, especially for R&D and design ecosystem, we have made specific recommendations, and I'm sure they will be looked at very seriously. Shifting to deemed approval for regulatory filings and compliances is something which has to be done so that industry's ease of doing business becomes much better. Uh, we last 2 years, unfortunately, the road shows outreach has been digital. I think we need to become very vigorous in this, and uh, by next year, I think a global conference on electronic manufacturing to show to the world that India has arrived needs to be done. We are recommending a dedicated EODB structure within MIT to work with DPIIT and the entire government. Stop sharing. I think in the end, I'll once again like to acknowledge the tremendous support the industry has received from MIT and the rest of Government of India, and also that the Honorable Prime Minister's vision is the driving force for us. These numbers are very significant and very large, but the industry is completely behind the government, and his motivation of सबका साथ, सबका विकास, सबका विश्वास, and सबका प्रयास. I think this industry has imbibed that, and we are looking for a glorious future for the electronic industry in partnership with MIT and the rest of Government of India. Thank you, sir.
Thank you so much, Pankaj ji. Sabka Prayas is definitely something that we all have to do together. You've talked about exports of 120 billion, which is 20% of mercantile exports of India 5 years from now. And for that, mobile phones alone, around 60 billion of exports, which is 10% of total exports of the country. So that is the kind of significance or prominence the sector can achieve. And that is where probably I would now, so we have brought 3 industry champions also, who have been participants in the PLI schemes, both the PLI schemes of Ministry of Electronics and IT, the mobile and electronics and component scheme, as well as the IT hardware scheme. So we'll start with Mr. Josh Folger, country head of India and managing director of Bharat FAH Limited. Josh, in his earlier avatar, has also been responsible for architecting the Nokia's mobile phone manufacturing in India. He plays a very important role in terms of strategic direction and business development for sustainable manufacturing for the group that he represents. The facilities in Andhra Pradesh and Tamil Nadu, or Foxconn, are recognized to be among the largest and among the best in the region. So without further ado, I request now Josh Folger to kindly present his thoughts on the report and on manufacturing.
Namaskar and Vanakkam. From Bharat FIH, Foxconn Technology Group Company. Respected Minister Ashwini ji, respected Minister of State Rajiv ji, Ajay Saab, Anurag ji, Saurabh ji, other dedicated, very sincere government officials, champions of the industry who are present here in this call and beyond, friends from the industry, media. It's an honor to be here on, and I'll say it's a privilege for somebody like me who spent 30 but really 25 years around the world in this global value chain. I had the privilege of bringing this value chain about 17 years ago to India, and we have not stopped. The journey continues. Very, very proud to be here on this occasion to release this Vision Document Volume 2, the $200 billion Sustainable Electronics Manufacturing Exports by 2026. A lot of work has gone into this. Really commend Pankaj ji, Saurabh ji, Ajay Saab on commandeering these things with our and everybody's valid inputs. The government of India has given high priority to electronics manufacturing sector. Is very encouraging for the industry and for some of us who have been a little part in this, in steering this. The sector is definitely poised, as Pankaj ji mentioned, to play a vital role in achieving this 1 trillion economic value. India has already demonstrated being the second largest mobile phone manufacturer worldwide. And as we saw on the excerpt, the scripts from the report, there is a surge in internet penetration rates, other electronics equipment, and the convergence, EVs are also really coming into fore. We look forward to this comprehensive vision document will take us, the country, in the right direction and build a strong ecosystem in the electronics sector. The aim to boost electronic domestic manufacturing through PLI scheme is seeing great progress with the investment and manufacturing activity already started in our campuses and others, witnessing increased production, assembly activities across products such as mobile phones and other consumer electronics. The government reforms and the policies have been excellent the last 7 years. We commend the government for that, but this needs to be continued to have a complete, independent and dedicated focus, as Pankaj ji mentioned. As the industry progresses towards more high-tech, it requires really, truly billions of dollars of investments and a lot of commitment from the investors. Will need to have the confidence to ensure that the right resources are on the ground to sort of ensure that it is executed. Great beginnings in the sector need to be sustained. We need to enhance our ecosystem to be a very high-tech one. With the role of the vision document, I'm glad and I'm sure it will guide the industry to towering heights in the very near future, to make India's manufacturing capabilities the best in the world, which gives assurance, to the global customers, for us. It would pave a way for local manufacturing to be very sophisticated and truly, really embody and make Atmanirbhar Bharat happen on the ground. Equal emphasis should be laid on building infrastructure, skilled manpower, logistics, availability of raw materials is very important, the multiple tiers of raw materials. The spur in demand for mobile devices, telecom equipment, and other things, among others like EVs, should lead a way to give massive demand in semiconductors as well. The future, therefore, investments will definitely get us into a place where next generation interconnected devices would further increase the demand for intelligent computing, thereby creating a sustainable demand for electronics products in the country. India is also undeniably has a very strong design base already. According to the Department of Electronics and Technology, nearly 2,000 chips are being designed every year in India, and more than 20,000 engineers are working in various aspects of chip design and verification. This very strong foundation in building our capabilities of manufacturing high-end, high-tech electronics. As Indian electronics and hardware industries are expected to grow significantly, the potential to cater to other countries such as Middle East, Africa, South Asian countries, India has a great chance to capitalize it. The demand over the years has steadily climbed, and over the last years, there's been an increased demand, including India. This has triggered the connectivity infrastructure needed to the COVID pandemic, where the world has moved to a virtual platform overnight. Mobile devices grew substantially, triggering other related infrastructure to keep pace of the consumption. We believe that this multiplier effect will really give us a lot of challenges, but really which can be translated into opportunities, which I'm confident as we are capturing this in the vision document and then putting them into empowering policies, we'll see this through. So with that, all the best to all of us, and thank you very much for this opportunity. Bye-bye.
11.
Thank you so much, Josh. We do expect Foxconn to continue to play the stellar role that it is playing and continue to excel in all the segments that it is engaged in and bring new product segments also into the country. While we look at the international EMS players, the global champions, it is equally important that the role of national champions be brought out in the strategy for electronics manufacturing. These national champions will be the ones that will truly bring sustainable manufacturing in the country and also be able to control the supply chain and bring and have an impact on the components ecosystem also. It is here that I would now request Mr. Hariom Rai, MD Lava, which is the leading mobile handset company in India and which has operations to many geographies, the ones that Josh already talked about, and with a vision of empowering people to do more and to be more. I think Lava is uniquely placed to regain the old glory and to become a catalyzing force in the future also. So over to you, Mr. Hariom Rai.
Thank you, sir. Honorable Minister Shri Ashwini Vaishnav ji, Honorable Minister of State Shri Rajiv Chandrasekhar ji, Shri Secretary Shri Ajay Sani ji, and also Anurag Jain ji, and Joint Secretary Shri Saurabh Gaur ji, other government colleagues and industry colleagues and friends from media. So I'll speak on 4 things, in the context and backdrop of this report. One, again, about this report, what is the context and backdrop with which the vision document has been created together with the industry and the government together. The importance of electronics has already been shared, but I think the electronics and tech must be seen in combination. And third one, I would talk about the possibilities, that whether whatever we are sharing, is it possible or not? 1 minute, my screen is switched off. Because of no activity for a long time. Yeah.
You are perfectly visible and can be seen.
Okay, but I thought the screen is switched off. Yeah. So then the last is the way forward, and so let me set the context of why this report and the perspective. So we were as country, as our country, we were 25% of the global GDP. We used to be that for 5,000 years. When Britishers came, we were still 25% of the global GDP as country. We have been built tremendously. When they left us at 3.9% of the global GDP. But in the last 75 years, we brought that further down to 3.14% now of the global GDP. And the only way we can reverse this trend is by exporting our products and service. And we are 18% of the global population, surviving on a mere 3.14% of the global GDP. We have to take our fair share from the global GDP, and the way forward is exports. Now, from this big high-level perspective, let us understand the electronics and tech, because a large part of electronics is software only, and therefore electronics cannot be seen only as electronics hardware, but it has to be seen in conjunction with the software. So both electronics and tech together contributes to about $16 trillion in the global GDP. Their valuation is also equal to the total valuation of the global valuation of the companies, which is $15.5 trillion. And the way it is also going, its proliferation to every aspect of human lives and every industry, its contribution is only growing. And it's just I would say it is going to take about 20% of the entire global valuation and the global GDP. So which means it is such an important sector for us, and unless we are able to kickstart this sector and take the fair share from the global GDP, it will be very, very difficult for us to actually become a $15-16 trillion or 18% of the global GDP of the country. So what are the possibilities of doing this? $300 billion seems to be daunting a little bit, but when you see from the possibilities side, the geopolitical contexts are very clear, and the cost of production in China is growing because of their per capita income now. Nobody wants to work in the factories. People have ample opportunities to work in the malls, etc., and in the service sector. So therefore, China plus one is very clear after the last 30 years of manufacturing in China. And the only country which can replace China is India, because of our young, large population and potentially a very, very large market going forward. So we are a small market right now, 3.14% market only, because 3.14% GDP means we cannot be more than that market size. But as we are going to grow our GDP, this market is going to grow equal to China. And therefore, it makes all the sense to manufacture in India and export to the world. The most important thing is that when we see the globalized world, only a few countries are going to supply globally. And I think 2 to 3 countries maximum are going to supply to the world, to remaining 200 countries. And therefore, India has a very, very large role to take in this. In my mind, we should target for 50% of the total global production of electronics in India. And from that context, if we see, we are talking about $1.5 trillion of production. And when we see, then $300 billion is just a small milestone, and not in the large journey. And therefore, it is very much possible. On the tangible terms, if we see also the possibilities, these are the costs consist of 3 things: the human capital cost, the financial capital cost, and raw material cost to produce anything. And human capital cost is the largest value creator amongst these 3 costs. And let me give you an example as to why I'm saying what I'm saying. So let's say to produce a chip, what you require is, they also have 3 costs, which is, coming from the human capital cost and the capital cost and the raw material cost. The most of the capital cost in the chip is coming from the cost of depreciation of the fab. And when you go to the fab, the cost of the fab by material terms is only millions of dollars. But when which is like, let's say, the steel and the material used in the fab is a very small cost. But the most of the cost in the fab is human capital, human skill. And therefore, when in India, when we are able to create skill, bring skill to India at the lowest per capita now in comparison to the rest of the world, we are 17% of the per capita now of China. Nobody can be more competitive than us, in the world. And therefore, what are the way forwards? I think we are rightly talking about 2 pillars: the global champions to bring the scale and also the skills to begin with, and the Indian champions to deepen the skills and also create the skills horizontally in terms of the entire supply chain. And there is no doubt that I'll again reiterate that when we bring the skills and also economies of scale, we would be the most competitive globally. And last, I think I would like to quote Michelangelo, who said that the greatest danger to most of us is not that our aim is too high and we miss it, but that it is too low and we reach it. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Hariomji. Very aptly said, as always. And we look forward to you to be able to set very high aim for yourself and to be able to reach it as we look at Indian companies also expressing themselves in the electronic manufacturing sector. That brings me to the biggest EMS company of India in mobile phone, and not just mobile phone, the whole of electronic manufacturing, which is Dixon Technologies, which is represented by Mr. Sunil Bachani, who is the chairman of Dixon Technologies, and he brings almost 3 decades of experience in electronic manufacturing with him. Under his stewardship, Dixon has emerged as the largest Indian EMS ODM company, and it is also manufacturing some of the leading brands of the industry and has also been a net forex earner in terms of being able to export also. It has also been adjudged as best Indian EMS on various fora. I would request Mr. Bachani to talk about, your screen is frozen for some time, Mr. Bachani, if you can reshare, to talk about his thoughts on the report and also on the challenges that you see in the ecosystem. Thank you.
Thank you, sir, so much. I hope you can hear me.
Yes, sir.
Honorable Minister Shri Vaishnav Ji, Honorable Minister of State Shri Chandrasekhar Ji, Honorable Secretary Mighty and other distinguished secretaries of the Government of India, Joint Secretary Shri Saurabh Gaurji, my industry colleagues and ladies and gentlemen, it's a pleasure to be here today and speaking amongst colleagues here today. I think it's only befitting that in the 75th year of independence, we are talking about becoming truly self-reliant and Atmanirbhar, and also making India the next hub for electronic hardware manufacturing, and also achieving a target of almost $300 billion of production. I think if we see the history of countries and economies, we see that not many countries' economies have jumped straight from agrarian economies to a services economy. And I think India should also not do that. I think India has a unique advantage of being very large and excelling in both manufacturing and services at the same time. And I think in manufacturing also, I feel that electronic hardware manufacturing has the biggest potential in creating employment in the remotest corners of India. I think if I recall my own experience of setting up our first television unit in Tirupati, I recall that when I went, there was hardly any manufacturing happening in the small temple town. And in a very, very short period of time, when one goes there, we see large number of units manufacturing very high-tech parts like for mobile phones, and also finished products like televisions, security systems, and many, many more finished products. So I think that's the kind of revolution that needs to be spread across every small town in India. And I'm sure that's going to happen. I think if we see electronic hardware manufacturing sector, I think Pankaj talked about in his presentation, there are many, many opportunities there. But if I were to pick a few sectors besides mobile phone, I would pick the sector of LED lighting manufacturing and consumer electronics manufacturing, and particularly the wearables and hearables segment in that. And why I say that, and I think if you look at these product categories, especially like LED lighting, India has developed a large scale of manufacturing today, thanks to the aggregation model of the Government of India, wherein we're producing almost 700 million bulbs just as one category, and there are many, many more categories in lighting. Also, if you look at the value addition, we've also achieved a very, very high value addition, and this is going to go even higher with the component ecosystem being created because of the PLI that came. So I think and another sector that I would say in consumer electronics is the wearables and wearable segment, and I think where India has the opportunity of manufacturing not only for the domestic market but for global markets. So I think these are the two sectors where we see a huge potential besides many other sectors, and as I said, mentioned mobile phones also. We at Dixon have tried to play a role in trying to make sure that India emerges as the next hub for manufacturing of these products by investing in factories across product categories like consumer electronics, home appliances, security systems, IT hardware, telecom products, especially the consumer and telecom products, and of course, mobile phones. Sir, I'm very happy to inform you that we at Dixon have already invested more than 200 crores, which was a requirement for the full 4 years of the scheme in the first year itself. And this is almost going to double down in the next 2 years with a fifth plant of manufacturing of mobile phones in Noida with almost 1 million square feet. In lighting also, sir, Dixon has emerged as the second largest, in fact, the top 5 players in the world with deep backward integration and manufacturing in most of the components. But sir, while we in the country and industry have achieved many targets and many milestones, I feel that this is not the time to rest on our achievements and laurels, and I think this is the time to really double down and aim for the skies and put India on the map for electronic hardware manufacturing amongst the global giants in the world. So I think it's also important that while the world watches us and take these giant strides, that we put our best foot forward and focus on some key areas in the next 5 years. And I think Pankaj has already talked about that in his presentation. I won't take too much time on that, but if I were to pick up a few points, I would say that seamless dispersal of incentives, that I think you also talked about, is extremely important. There also needs to be a complete clarity on the customs duty structure and what formats of import is really acceptable to all the ministries, and how the end use notifications are going to move. And I think the industry needs to be educated on that. And also we need to ensure that there are no retrospective demands in this respect, because while the world is watching us, as I said, that we need to put our best foot forward. And also we are sitting on a huge opportunity. So another point that I would like to highlight is that I think that we need to bring up our millions of MSMEs to grow and really reach their potential, because that's the only way I think we can develop a strong and vibrant component ecosystem, which is really the need of the hour. We need to focus on design-led manufacturing, because I feel that's the only way that in the long term we can be completely self-reliant and not depend on any incentives once this scheme of PLI is over in the next 5 years across product categories. So I think it's also extremely important that we become part of the global supply chains and also sign the FTAs with the consumption-led economies, which I'm sure is already on high on the agenda, looking at the reports that are coming in. So someone asked me that what is the biggest change that has happened in the last 5 years or last 10 years in the industry in the country. And I say that the biggest change that has happened is the change in the mindset. We in the industry believe now that yes, we have the capability and we will emerge as the next hub for electronic hardware manufacturing. And I said, I remember the words of the famous poet who said that no power on earth can stop an idea whose time has come. And I feel this is India's time, and we are going to make it happen, and we will make India the next hub for electronic manufacturing. Thank you so much for this opportunity. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Vachani. Great words indeed. I would like to thank, in fact, all the other industry partners also. Because of paucity of time, we can't really have more people. But the fact that you have provided global perspectives on what needs to be done, what is the way forward for us, and how do we become cost competitive. And the fact that the promise with the industry is that while there will be consistency in policy, there will also be phasing down of incentives, and we have to become self-reliant in a manner that the industry doesn't really depend on incentives, and that all it works with government is for very strong and stable policies and facilitation. Sir, that brings us to have discussion with some of the other departments which have been playing a key role. And DPIT is the nodal ministry which handles the PLI schemes and which provides assistance to Committee of Secretaries led by Cabinet Secretary. And under the leadership of Secretary DPIIT Anurag Jain sir, he has brought a new direction to PLI schemes with his breadth of understanding, his depth of knowledge and analysis also. And he has seen this manufacturing from very close quarters for quite some time now. He's been bringing new insights into how PLI schemes across sectors should be coming together to make it a very vibrant manufacturing ecosystem. Sir, to Anurag Jain sir, I would like to renew the fact that we've been making that electronics, that IT hardware is also as important a segment as mobile phone manufacturing is. And we are looking at $30 billion of IT hardware manufacturing, $15 billion of IT exports, which again will be 2.5% of total Indian exports in next 5 years. And that is where that for the policy which is expressive of that need and which is essential an investment into the ecosystem should be brought forward. With these words, sir, may I now request Secretary DPIIT, Shri Anurag Jain, sir, to kindly address the gathering.
Honorable Minister, Shri Ashwin Vaishnav ji, Honorable MOS, Shri Rajiv Chandrasekhar ji, Secretary Electronics, Ajay Sani sir, Saurabh, Sunil Vachani ji, Hariom Rai ji, Josh Folger ji, Pankaj Mahendru ji, and all other industry champions. First of all, I would like to compliment you for coming out with this idea of launch of vision document, $300 billion for sustainable electronics. And this is a true example of industry-government partnership. The way you have worked together, it's a fantastic effort, I would say. It's an effort in the right direction. The data which you have given, like what has happened from 2014-15 to 2020-21, that's very encouraging. Like we had a CAGR of 19% or 17%, whichever way you look at it, like getting the COVID period in, it goes down a little, otherwise it was CAGR of 19% production going up. But we should also look at some other points. What has happened? The trade deficit has also increased. Of course, one may say that because of what we have done in last 7 years, had we not done it, the trade deficit would have been much wider. Like production increased much faster than the imports. So therefore, trade deficit is not as high as it would have been had we not gone in this direction. Overall consumption basket of electronics in the country, it has moved, the component of Indian production has moved up from 50% to 60% plus. So that's a good news. So we are making the efforts in the right direction, and this vision document is also the next piece in the same direction. But can we be more aggressive? That is what I would like to bring on the table. Like the same data which is presented as a very rosy picture. When you look at it in 2014-15, 1.9 lakh crore was Indian production, import 2.29 lakh crore, export 0.38. So if you calculate, it's about 50% of the total consumption. We have moved up a great deal, going up to 5.33 lakh crore as our production. Given the imports and export data, the trade deficit is now 3.18 lakh crore. Definitely, very, very good effort, increasing at 19% CAGR. But how can we be more aggressive? That is what we should be looking at. Like I'm extremely grateful to Mr. Hariom ji, the kind of thought process he brought in. Actually, our industry should be looking from that lens, the way it is going to grow. Right now, we are about close to 3% of the world manufacturing in the electronics. If we do achieve this $300 billion, but the world electronics is set to grow from present $3 trillion to about $7.5 trillion 5 years down the line. So our share will of course increase, We'll be faster than the world, but from 3% to about 4%. So yes, very good thought process, very good way to function together with industry and the government working together. But let's all concentrate. This should be the base case scenario. And can we make it faster? We have huge things going in our favor. Like we have talked about the demographic thing. We have talked about other countries, population issues, they are going to become aging. So jobs have to shift, people have to find younger people in. So what do we need to do? Lot of policy efforts have been made. I'm not repeating that. The latest one being that 76,000 crore scheme, which has been cleared extremely at great speed after the present team of the minister and MOS joined. And I must compliment them for pulling that cabinet note together so fast and such a fast approval. I compliment the whole team of the electronics ministry. So 76,000 crore there, 44,000 crore of PLIs, which already electronics department has. So 1,20,000 crore of PLIs. This kind of an intervention from government was unheard of, I can tell you. In history, this kind of a thing has never happened. But more importantly, let's not look at the PLI of only these two things. We should look at PLI of other departments. PLI of, say, automobile, 26,000 crore. There's a huge thing which will come as electronics hardware. They are not going to create something, it's not only mechanical parts. So that is also indirect support the same ecosystem. The ACs and the white goods of LEDs of Department of DPIIT, which we directly run. MNRE, they are all electronics manufacturing. So all that is also effectively aiding the ecosystem. We should keep that at the back of our mind. But what is more important, that when we started this Digital India program 6 years back, that has come out with huge spin-off effects. Like one is the GEM Trinity. We are the unique country. We are the country which initiated this kind of a development. My friends from IIT who are in US, when they hear of this story, they actually do feel that Indian systems in many ways are much better, like our Ayushman Bharat and this Govin platform. They were all amazed. Some of them visited me last month only. They were so amazed at Govin. Okay, everything happens seamlessly. So our GEM, UPI, BharatNet is another huge investment. So government itself is a huge procurer. And we have come out with our policies to encourage made in India procurement, which does help the industry. So all this actually presents a huge opportunity. Now couple this with, when we talk about the incentives, it is not only the direct incentives which have been offered and we are talking about. We should also talk about the convergence of various schemes. If you want to train your, I recall Mr. Pankaj Mahindru coming to me at that point of time, I used to be in the PMO. He came to me for certain kind of support for the industry. I said, let's understand, I don't have money in this pocket, but I have something else as government where I can support. So let's look at those things to ensure that your industry gets the support which it requires. And at that point of time also, I mean, that is another very good thing which to have happened, that Mr. Ajay Sahni has been the secretary for so long. I recall he was the secretary at that point of time. Mr. Pankaj Mahindru, he and I, we worked together and we came up with something based on the suggestions from industry only of the phase manufacturing program. And that was the sort of, I think, the biggest initial thing which happened in the mobile manufacturing thing. So there we did not really give much of a fiscal incentive in monetary terms, but we lent our policy support. We decided, okay, this is what can be done. So what is doable? You have to also consider the kind of constraints which a government has. You just can't have unlimited demands. But if we work together, we understand your problem, you understand our problem, and all our sharp minds, I'm sure industry people are extremely bright. So we can understand the constraints with the government and work together a package or things which are possible to do within the government system. And that can really take us together where we would find our place in the sun in the world. So this is what I was talking about, the convergence issue. We also have one program called ODOP. I'm just citing another example where we try to look at the districts, what they are producing. So the small handicraft, small agriculture production, etc., etc. And my department, when I joined, my department was trying to fix every problem. This particular district has so many 15 problems, so let's create a scheme for this, let's create a scheme for this. My first take was, why do we need to create a new scheme for something? Let's first look at whole of government approach. Let us list down the issues which these people are facing and see if any department has any scheme for that. And when we started looking at it, trust me, we did not need to make any, like I got 15 products studied for every problem which was presented to us by the people of that particular district or the producers of that district. We had a solution in some department of the government. So what we needed a collaborative effort to ensure that we work collaboratively among ourselves and we are able to give that kind of a support to that particular industry in that particular district. So similarly, when we talk about electronics industry, one of the biggest issue is skilled manpower. I hear this word day in and day out from everybody. When we talk to foreign companies to come and set up our shop, your engineers are not employable, we have to train them, skill is lacking. While we also know that we have some of the best brains in the world if you go by the race wise. Our people do exceedingly well when they go out. And I have done my post-graduation in US, so I know what I'm saying with a kind of confidence that classmates of mine used to treat me almost like a professor because they felt that our understanding of maths and differential equations and all this was so superior compared to what they had. We could almost visualize that. So the point is, we need a skilled manpower. Why doesn't the industry come together, create a skilling program for yourself? Skill India is there to support. We have huge funds lying in skill ministry, which people come and fritter away the money ki wo usko hum we set up a tailoring skill shop or a carpentry skill shop somewhere or something. All of you have big campuses, work together as one industry, create 3, 4, 5 skill universities related to skill manufacturing, train people, you'll get huge support from Skill India. That's a collaborative thing. Take those people out, ensure that those people are trained to your satisfaction because training will be your job. You'll get a huge support in terms of money. And you already have campuses, very low cost skill model can be created for your industry. Similarly, if higher end of skill has to be done, that also can be supported. Who says that skilling is only for the low level jobs? If you want to train the higher level engineers, why don't you think of a program like this? Skilling can come from there also. We have been listening to things like ease of doing business, cost of doing business being high. I am not sure what we have been able to achieve. Frankly speaking, when we talk about that we have come from 142 to 63, yes, it's a good achievement. But what is a change on the, when I talk to the manufacturers or the industrialists, I keep listening to that things have not, some things have changed for good, some certain things have not changed. But can we start putting our fingers, and when we work together, can you start giving us concrete points where it is? Like the other day I was talking to an industry association, they were talking about cost of doing business. I said, exactly tell me what it is. If you can break down the components, we can share, we can start working together. I can't promise you, like today I was happy when the presentation but you did mention only one thing. You talked about cost of power. But this cost of power being 5 rupees, I have been hearing since the days I used to be secretary to chief minister, which is 10 years old story. That time our cost of power of for industries in Madhya Pradesh used to be around 7 rupees. So people used to come and used to ask, ki sahab 4 rupees ki power ka hame de dijiye, we'll put our shop in your place. Or 5 rupees ki de dijiye. Now 10 years down the line also we are talking about 5 rupees. Let's really sit down, compare overall cost economics. Every geography has certain positives, certain negatives. You have to look at the holistic thing. We can't be talking union of best of everything. That is what when I talk to industry, I keep getting this feeling that you want everything best in the class. You compare on all 10 items and you want everything to be best and you want union of that as an incentive. So let's be seriously looking at it. That kind of a situation will never be possible for any government. I mean, whatever is possible will work together. This MNRE, this renewable energy cost, it has come down to less than 3 rupees, 4 rupees. So you work among yourself. Why don't you forge? Who stops you creating? Like other day I was sitting with NTPC, CMD. He gave a brilliant idea. I actually said, please go ahead and do it. Now we know that thermal plants are going to go down. There's a way forward. They have a lot of vacant lands actually next to their plants. So they are ready to set up shop there. And at that point of time, since the transmission loss, etc. is not there, plus you can set up the solar shop somewhere, they are ready to have a long-term agreement. So it is industry, collaborative networks can create a lot of positives. We should be looking at that more closely. One thing which has changed to my mind over the last decade or maybe last 7 years, that has been the specific point. Earlier, government was more in the frame of regulator. There has been a, like the way you talked about, Mr. Sunil Bachani, you talked about change of mindset of the industry. Maybe that has come because of the association of the government. There has been a huge change in the mindset of the government. I've been in the governments now for almost 32 years. I've changed a huge change from regulatory going to facilitative and trying to attract investment. That change in approach in the government is a very, very clear change we can observe. Plus the more important thing which Honorable Prime Minister has been guiding continuously, break the departmental silos, talk about whole of government approach. That is what is important, and which has also been mentioned by Mr. Pankaj Mahindru in his presentation. This whole of government approach, that we are working together as one team and there's no divergence. We sit together, find out solutions and come out. So I think one of you, Mr. Sunil Bachani, he himself said that this is the right time to invest in India. So I am also saying, if there was ever any time where we could take this kind of a optimistic journey, time to invest in the country, this is the right time. When we are in the 75th year, next 25 years, we should be a superpower. That is what the journey can be. All of us put together, we can put our role, we can play our role, and we are there to walk with you. Compliments once again for this excellent thought process, excellent beginning, $300 billion. But I would end by saying, taking cue from Mr. Hari Om Rai, that this should be the base case and we should be aiming much higher, reworking, but key the process. How do we go about creating steps? We are there to work together. You will have whatever your people who are going to support you in the policy, you can count me +1. Thank you.
Thank you so much, sir, for your unstinted support to the cause of electronic manufacturing in the different roles that you have played, and for being very frank and forthright in terms of what government should be doing and what is expectations from industry.
Saurabh, sorry, one more thing. I think somebody, sorry, Saurabh, I'll just make one more point. Somebody mentioned about FTAs. So FTA is something which I think I should put it on the table. Government, my colleague Department Commerce, and since we are in the same ministry, I keep hearing that very closely. We are in process of negotiating 7 to 8 FTAs, and that should come out very soon in the next 1.5 years. And the complaint of my minister is, he keeps on telling that our industry does not support us fully in negotiating well. When we ask, industry comes out with only asking for the not to give this. But when you actually negotiate an FTA, you have to give something, you'll get something back. So we have to be very careful in asking what we want. We should be equal partners. And as I said, facilitator, we are as a ministry listening to you and wanting ideas from you for the FTA. So if you can have a crack team for finding out what FTA should be like, analyze their policies, analyze our policies, come back with proper detailed inputs, we shall be happy to have that. Thank you.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you so much, sir, for that interjection on FTAs also. Let me assure you, we've been working closely with industry, and of the lines of interest, the HS codes, where we should be essentially giving away concessions is also again something that we are very conscious of. Now may I request, in interest of time, I would now request Honorable Secretary, Minister of Electronics and IT, Shri Ajay Sahni Saab, who has been leading the ministry with distinction for last 4 years and who has numerous initiatives to his credit, to kindly address the gathering. Sir.
Hello. Hello.
Ananta ji, please mute yourself. Yeah, sir, please. Sorry.
Same button. Honorable Minister Shri Ashwini Vaishnav ji, Honorable Minister Shri Rajiv Chandrasekhar ji, Anurag Jain ji, who has been a co-traveler in this right from the time he was in PMO, Shri Pankaj Mahindru ji, Josh Folgar ji, Hariom Rai ji, Sunil Vachani ji, Virat Bhatia, the doyens of the industry, our colleagues from various departments and ministries who are here with us, and people from the media. It's a great pleasure to be at this event where we are looking at a second part of the vision document for electronics industry. I think getting the ambition level right, Hariom Raiji has been mentioning that, and many others have alluded to that. I think it's very important to get the ambition level right. So this $300 billion and a shared something that we are able to put down on paper and we are able to quantify it. It's a wonderful effort and crystallizes our thoughts into what we are attempting to achieve together. A second aspect of putting it on paper is that it makes us recognize the journey that we have already traversed and the kind of challenges we will have, what all we have to get right to get to this scale. Now, the biggest of the items that we are trying to tackle is mobile, 30 to 126 billion, 4x increase. Then we have 4 significant segments at about where our level of ambition is at about 25 or 23 billion dollars. IT hardware, industrial electronics, consumer electronics, and automotive electronics. The 4 big entities, about 25 billion each. And then we have the entire components ecosystem, LED, strategic electronics, PCBA, telecom, wearables and hearables. Many of these are actually almost at a very initial stage, and we need to pick up momentum in these. And in some of them, telecom and wearables, hearables, we have to almost make a beginning and get to a very high level. And then in case of PCBA, it'll be a sort of 24x kind of a journey if we, the way we are looking at, the possibilities of getting to $12 billion from just $500 million. So the journey has to be in 2 parts. One is addressing the existing segments, and the journey in India, as Anurag has pointed out, that still there is a lot of import that is happening. A journey segment-wise has to begin with import substitution and then gain size, gain scale, bring down the tariffs, bring down the dependence on, in fact, even on government, achieve competitiveness at the international scale so that we move into export. Only then we can move forward, successfully. So in each segment, I think the nuancing of what policy interventions are required, and the policy interventions for import substitution are fairly different from the policy interventions that are required for exports, because you need scale and you need to be competitive with anyone else anywhere in the world if you have to export successfully. So this journey, it's an exhilarating journey. It's a very satisfying journey. At the same time, we have to, also be very mindful of what is it we are trying to contribute to the economy. So primarily where we begin is in creating a large number of jobs, in creating employment potential, in creating large factories. So those are some of the issues that I think get highlighted in this report, and it's very nice that those get articulated in this manner so that policies can actually follow the direction which industry is also, or our research is pointing us towards. At the same time, I would like to also mention just one more point, that getting into new product segments is absolutely essential. Even while we are fighting a huge battle in picking up momentum in the existing segments, it is the new segments which can actually take us where we want to be. Segments like, there are significant segments, smart meters, etc. It's not just for India. It is almost for the globe that we should be planning our work. We should be similarly planning our work in the industrial automotive segment, in robotics and in robotic process automation, and also in terms of even drones and the capital goods for whatever is happening, because the scale is now sufficient for us not to constantly just get reconciled to importing the SMT machines from wherever we have been importing, but it's time also to move into the new segment in capital goods. And for that, I think Josh Folger is the one who has really drawn our attention repeatedly to that area. And Josh, thanks for that. And I think it's time now to move very actively and aggressively into that area as well. So the new product segments, wearables and hearables, telecom, where we have been almost constantly been importers of everything. I think these are going to be exceptionally important, and using the emerging technologies, keeping pace with the emerging technologies and moving or designing for an aggressive play in each of those segments. I think whether it is in healthcare through medical devices or in drones, these are segments that are going to be very important, or in IoT devices of various kinds. So these are the other segments that I would want to add to what has already come in the report. But I'm really delighted to see this report, and it gives us a base document, which is an agreed document between industry and the Ministry of Electronics and IT. And I hope that this will help us tweak our policies and move forward together as Team India. Thank you so much for preparing this report. Thank you. Jai Hind.
Thank you so much, sir. And that brings us to the most awaited part of the event, which is launching of the report by the Honorable Ministers and Secretary Mehti. Sir, may I request you to please launch the report. Sir, while the report talks about the journey for $300 billion, I would also want to bring out here the point that Secretary DPIT alluded to, the fact that there has to be new metrics for measuring electronic manufacturing also, and the fact that while it talks about mobile phones, IT hardware, PCBs, telecom, the fact that medical electronics, renewable energy, energy storage, where again we have PLI schemes that have already come out, the emerging product segments that Secretary Mehti alluded to, drones, robotics, autonomous systems, the fact that in capital goods and heavy machinery, a lot of electronic content is rising. In the logistics sector also with the industrial IoT and the automation segment, and the opportunities that electronics service and repair industry, as well as electronics waste processing and recycling industry offers are other segments that can also bring even more value and volume to the electronic manufacturing country. So with this, sir, I now request Shri Rajiv Chandrasekhar ji, Honorable Minister of State for Electronics and IT and Skill Development and Entrepreneurship. In his unique role, he brings the two sectors together with great distinction. He's been leading these efforts and he's been driving the industry also relentlessly with the earlier report that had come on the value chains and with the culmination of this report. So over to request sir to address the gathering.
Good afternoon all. Minister Ashwini Vaishnav ji, Secretary Ajay Pratap Sani ji, Secretary Anurag Jain, and my teams and colleagues at the Ministry of Electronics, ladies and gentlemen. I concur with everybody today who have talked about this report as being a very important document, an important milestone. This is, as you are aware, this is the second volume of two documents that have been prepared by the industry in active consultation, discussion, and engagement with the ministry. And I would like to lay out for you how we did this and why we did this, just to give you a sense of our whole approach in the government and in the ministry towards this very important sector of electronics and our mission to become a $1 trillion digital economy. On the 6th of August, the Honorable Prime Minister said, and some of you have alluded to it, he said, and I quote, "Post-COVID, there is an extensive debate in the world on global supply chains. We must put all our strength into taking advantage of new opportunities," end quote. Very shortly after that, the ministry took a view that we wanted to focus on broadening and deepening our electronics industry in India. And even recently, as of 17th of Jan, the Honorable Prime Minister talked at the World Economic Forum about India emerging as a reliable and trusted partner in value chains. So this is the backdrop to what we are doing and in terms of what we are now putting forth. I agree with Secretary DPIIT that today's volume 2 is a very important milestone in this partnership between government and industry. To steer and accelerate India's electronics sector and India's electronics ecosystem to a very important phase 2 of growth. $300 billion of manufacturing and $120 billion of exports is a very important, significant milestone that we are setting out. We can obviously argue that this is a base level conservative target or not. But it is clear that digital adoption and digital consumption in India is far outpacing manufacturing of digital products in India. And that gap, as the Secretary DPIIT pointed out, is expanding and increasing. And it should be our endeavor to create enough momentum to bridge that and converge at some point down the road, where our consumption of electronics and the production of electronics, consumption of digital products and our production of digital products and services converge in terms of our ability to serve our own needs. On 2nd November, just 2 months ago, we released with a forward by the Honorable Prime Minister a document which in a sense is the preamble or a precursor to today's document, and that document's title was titled Increasing India's Electronics Exports and Share in GVCs. And there was a deliberate reason for that. That objective of that document was to create awareness to the very different phase and very different nature of the growth that we will now face going forward. That while the first phase was in a sense driven by domestic consumption and import substitution to a large extent, the second phase of growth, which is what this document is now signaling, is a phase that will be driven by significant expansion of global markets and global customers for Indian-made products. So truly, this is the phase where the Make in India for electronics will kick in, and $120 billion of exports is not an insignificant goal for us as an ecosystem to achieve. New markets, new customers, and being a player in this global value chain is the goal and mission of the second phase. And I want to say this on record, that these two volumes represent an excellent example of goal setting, detailed strategy making after hours of rigorous engagement between government and industry. And I hope that this will pave in a way the way of the future for government goal setting and planning of our economy and missions. The opportunity, let me say, is a real opportunity. There is no, and I think all of us who have spoken so far have alluded to this opportunity not being on pie in the sky, an empty number. This is a number, and this report confirms that this is a real opportunity. This is an opportunity driven by two factors, as the growth of digital consumption and the growth and the diversification of global supply chains. So these two important events are signaling that this opportunity for growing our electronics ecosystem is a real one. And so there should be no doubts about the fact that this path that we have signaled in this document is a real path that we must walk, we must run, and we must achieve. In the next few weeks and maybe months, you will see that we as a government and as all of government will own these goals as much as you own these goals, and we will roll out our set of actions and our set of initiatives and our ownership of these goals in a way that befits the importance of these goals to our national mission. The report has signaled, as you have in the past informally, there are three baskets of challenges and challenges to deal with this opportunity: tariffs, costs, and other policy and state government type of regulatory issues. We have understood those. We will continue to work with those. The Honorable Prime Minister has made ease of doing business as a clear government mission. METI will be a catalyst, evangelist, advocate, your friend, your partner, whichever adjective that you feel is appropriate, to ensure that we address those disabilities in a slow, systematic, and steady manner. I would agree with the Secretary DPIIT that this is not about just having a wish list of many things and all things needing to be delivered on day one. This is a partnership that will evolve, and this path we will walk down together. With the recently announced semiconductor policies, I think, and the commitment and this strategy document, I think the Indian electronics and innovation ecosystem is at a very real inflection point. Together we can make this real, and in the PM's word, Honorable Prime Minister's word, and somebody else mentioned that as well, Sabka Saath, Sabka Prayas, we will realize this $1 trillion digital economy goal and the $300 billion, which is 22 lakh. And I like saying this number again and again. It's 22 lakh 50,000 crores of electronics, up from 5 lakh crores of electronics. That is the mountain that we are going to climb. We are at base camp today, and we need to get to the peak of this. We can argue with Mr. Anurag Jain whether the peak is 22 lakh 550,000 crores or it's another number. But the fact that we are climbing this mountain and we will succeed is, I think, is something that we all agree with today. The path to the $1 trillion economy passes through the $300 billion electronics goal, and that we should be very clear about. And I'll end by thanking ICEA for being an extremely responsive partner to the goals of our country, our vision of our Prime Minister, and to be an important partner to the growth of the electronics and innovation ecosystem for India. Thank you so much. Jai Hind.
Thank you so much, sir. The mountain that we seek to climb requires not just vision, but very determined action, which is very much visible from the fact that both the Honorable Ministers have been consistently guiding us. And I would now request Honorable Minister Shri Ashwini Vaishnav ji to speak on this very momentous occasion for us in the ministry and the industry also. Honorable Minister's ability to take decisions that are unprecedented in impact and inspirational for every other department to emulate. I think we have seen that in all the ministries that he is inspiring in recent times. He is a man of action who truly believes in leading from the front and leading by example also. So, sir, looking forward to your address. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Saurabh. My colleague, Minister Shri Rajiv Chandrasekhar ji, Secretary Mr. Sahani, Secretary Mr. Jain, Chairman ICA Mr. Mohindru, Industry Captains Mr. Folger, Mr. Bhatia, Mr. Vachani, Mr. Rai, officials from other departments, my friends from media, and all my colleagues in METI. Indeed, practically everything that needs to be said has been said already, so I would not repeat any of those things. I'll just address a couple of points. About a month and a half back, when all the industry captains met me, I kept on asking, what is the specific thing that you would like me to focus on? What is that laser sharp focus that you would like me to put on? And I got 4 points on my table as a result of that interaction. First was large footprint factories which can hire something like 40,000 to a lakh workers. So I would like to report back today to the industry colleagues, what is the work done on that action item which you guys gave me. Two things. First, this requires a lot of change in the labor regulations. So first item that we did was to meet the labor minister, understand what are the limitations that he would be having if this kind of scale has to be done. And very gladly I am reporting back to all of you is that Labor Minister is very positive on this. He feels that this is a highly doable thing. This is not something which requires any major change in the legal framework or in the rules framework. It is very much possible just with administrative actions. And the commitment is that if this requires any change in the rules and regulations or even in the law, then also the commitment is there from the Labour Ministry for all of us, for the electronics industry, for the goal of creating the footprint which is needed for becoming competitive. The second point which many friends, at least 3 of the friends from the industry suggested is that many other countries have housing on campus. And that makes a very big difference in terms of productivity, efficiency, in terms of safety, security, many things. So this is another thing which is generally not allowed as per our labor regulations. So Mr. Sani and the team prepared a detailed note on it. Using that note, once again, I had discussions both with the state government labor officials and the labor minister at the Government of India. Both of them feel that just with a little bit of tweak in the regulations, it's possible. So the suggestion here is that we take a particular case and see whether it can be done with state governments tweaking of regulations, or it can be done with central governments advisory to the state government and then subsequent tweaking of regulations by the state government. So my request to the friends and colleagues from industry is that please come up with one specific location where we would like to test this idea and then take it forward. Third was about the dual regulations, because there is a fear that telecom ministry being a very regulatory kind of mindset. So if telecom also starts regulating mobile manufacturing industry, then it will become very difficult for the industry to grow at the pace at which it wants to grow. So a very clear decision has been taken. I'm sure all of you would be aware, but still I'm repeating it for the sake of record here. Based on your feedback, telecom department is not going to enter into mobile manufacturing at all. It will not regulate. It will continue to remain the light touch. It will continue to remain the light touch regulation which is currently there, and that regime is not going to change. It's very clear decision. The fourth point which came from these discussions is that many countries, and especially our neighbors and the other country, which we keep on believing and thinking that that's the country which has rightly emulated the neighbor's success, did a lot of work on creating the basic infrastructure from the government side, which is like having the entire industrial zone created, the roads created, the electricity and water infrastructure created, labor housing created, all that stuff. So can we emulate that at least at 2 or 3 places is what I thought. Let us take this challenge based on your feedback. And I'm happy to report back that we have identified at least 3 locations where this is possible to do. One of the locations team has been working very intensely is a location where railway land is available, a very large parcel of railway land is available, good land, very good water facility, close to a large city, accessible by international airport just at a hour's drive. There's a second land parcel which is now available, another international airport, 25 minutes drive, 1,000-acre kind of land which is available. Third place is again in not very close to the airport, but very highly industrialized zone where another 700, 800-acre land is available. So that kind of experiment, now it's possible to do, because all of you said that can we do something what Vietnam did, can we do something which China did. Yes, it's possible to do that kind of thing. So please come forward, come up with, please work with the team and with Rajiv ji and at least identify 2 of these locations. If you can shortlist, then we can take it forward in a very innovative way. We can all work together and create that kind of industrial zone where we believe that yes, this is the way to go forward. And once we create one, I'm sure it's possible that all other states and they will all compete and try to create similar zones. And that can be a great success going forward. So these are the 4 items that you gave me. So I thought it's my duty to report you back because Prime Minister Shri Narendra Modi ji believes in accountable government. He believes that we are a government where it's not just that we are giving the targets to you, but we are taking the targets from you and delivering back on that. It's a government which is known for execution, and it's a government where Honorable Prime Minister's 20 years in public services, every year is, every minute, every hour is spent on how to go forward, how to take that next step, how to make sure that our actions are in line with our vision and our goals. So that's what it is. And the second point which I would like to very briefly mention is that let me congratulate the entire team. The speed with which all the documents and all the policy framework items for semiconductor policy with the cabinet approved, I think on 15 December.
Yes.
And by I think by 1st Jan, practically the team had done almost everything which was needed to be done. The policy scheme documents, the approvals, the portal, everything was up and running on the 1st of Jan. And I commit to you, all of you, that this is the speed with which we'll continue to work, because that's the way Prime Minister is guiding us, and that's the way this government will work. So please come forward, work with the team, come up with suggestions wherever you feel more comfortable, whether in ATMP, whether in OSAT, whether in design, whether in compound semiconductors, whether in the fab, whichever place you feel that yes, there is a scope for coming forward and developing the industry. It would be great, and look forward to having one more round of interactions with all of you where we can take forward some of the points that you mentioned in the previous meeting and also decide upon further action items which will help us achieve the goals that we have set up in this very nicely drafted document. I would like to thank Mr. Chandrasekhar and colleagues and the industry for preparing a very, very neatly drafted, I somehow like to use this word, very neatly drafted document, because no extra verbiage anywhere, absolutely action oriented, absolutely goal oriented, very detailed and very specific. So look forward to one more round of discussions with you. and taking forward all these initiatives. Thank you very much. All the very best.
Thank you, Honorable Minister, sir. Honorable Minister is always a harbinger of good news, and with the specific action points that he has said, sir, we will follow up on that. And despite very busy schedule of both the ministers, they have spent the time that they have done today and interacted and have been constantly guiding. With this, may I now request Mr. Virat Bhatia, another doyen of the industry, and a very positive influence on the overall sector, MD Apple India, to kindly deliver the vote of thanks.
Thank you, Saurabhji. Shri Ashwini Vaishnav-ji, Honorable Minister, Shri Rajiv Chandrasekhar-ji, Honorable Minister for State, Shri Ajay Sani, Secretary METI, Arunag Jain-ji, Secretary DPIIT, Mr. Saurabh Gaur, my colleagues from the industry, friends from the media, ladies and gentlemen, good afternoon. It's my pleasant duty to propose a vote of thanks at the end of this session that has seen some remarkable and insightful statements from senior-most policymakers in the country, full of hope and commitment. What we've seen today is a true partnership between the government and the industry that remains unparalleled in any other sector. We were entrusted with this task 4 months ago by the METI leadership with 3 clear directions. First, do an assessment where we can reach together by working closely with the government and industry. Second, do a deep dive into the details and assess product by product, both for domestic and exports across a 5-year period. And finally, keep it a mix of ambition and reality, especially when it comes to securing the global market share, because that's very critical, something the Secretary DPIIT also pointed to. As a company, we have seen outstanding collaboration and support from the government that has existed every step. And I believe that this proactive approach available in general to every company in this sector. Thank you, Ashwini ji, for the good news that you've just delivered, the 4 points that you mentioned on the issue of large-scale factories, which is very good news. And just so you know, the ministry already reached out to us about 2 weeks ago, seeking specific information on what our competitors are doing in terms of housing policies, and the industry is now reading that paper and would be providing details of what's happening so that we have a framework that we can refer to. Also, thank you for the information on DOT being kept on the side of telecom equipment and light-handed regulation on the industry in general. Thank you very much for your support, for taking the time that you did that day to spend with the entire industry. I know you met, I think, 20 different companies that one day to take their inputs. And thank you for keeping that proactive approach of and allowing to meet us again. Thank you, Rajiv ji, for your point in bringing our attention back to the PM's direction and ambition, which led to the volume 1 and then volume 2 of this report. The fact that you pointed to the digital manufacturing needs to keep pace with the digital use and penetration. Also by helping us keep the strategic connection between the 2 reports that you said is very important and something that we need to focus on via the second report, which is the $122 billion of exports. And thank you for allowing and encouraging the collaboration between industry and government, in fact, leading it firsthand. That has really helped us with new vigor, and we continue to take that forward. I want to thank Mr. Sani for his incredible effort, not just now, but for over the last 3 years. I think it is end of 2017 till now. He's been leading the industry, been extremely proactive, has had numerous meetings on everything that we deal with. Today, his discussion on need to focusing on new sectors, on emerging technologies, and the need to keep pace with the future was again very inspirational. Finally, Mr. Anurag Jain-ji, who spoke about the trade deficit increase, something that we have on mind. The fact that this should be a base case, that we should look at a higher number. You're right, this number is going to go up from 590 odd, 15 trillion right now to 1.5 trillion to about 6-7 trillion. So we need to keep that number in mind. So to your point about concrete points on EODB, the industry is now working again very closely with METI to put together a full report on EODB. We expect that to be ready in the next month. We will present that to you. It's probably the first report of its kind that has sector-wise, ministry-wise specific issues detailed that we will present to you. Hopefully another first that the electronic sector will bring on the EODB, and we will do it in close collaboration with your team, sir. Thank you for that, and also for pointing to the global approach. And finally, for agreeing to be the +1 for this industry. Much has been spoken about the opportunity, about the details, about the team, more importantly, the seminal role that electronics manufacturing, especially exports, can play both in building the $1 trillion digital economy on one hand and the $1 trillion exports on the other. And we promise that if everything goes as planned, electronics will become, it has become the 6th or the 7th largest export at the end of this year. We'll see where it ends in March, from 11th largest export in 2018. We hope to be in the top 3, hopefully the biggest export in India by 2026. That's the plan, that's the report. The report is already online. The press release will be available shortly. With that, I seek your permission to officially bring this section of the discussion to a close and give it back to the Joint Secretary for the discussion that needs to be held with the media. Thank you, sir. Namaskar.
Thank you, Virat ji, for the address. I would also like to thank Digital India Corporation and MyGov for doing the live webcasting of this program, sir. I would also like to thank all my colleagues in the ministry also for making this a success and sticking to the time. Sir, we have a question answer, the media interaction which is being moderated by PIB, sir, and I hand it over to PIB, and I thank the media friends also for their presence there today and sticking with us and keeping us on our toes also. Thank you. And over to PIB. Is Monica there?
Yes, sir. Good afternoon.
Yeah, Monica, over to you now. Yeah. So
thank you so much, sir. Good afternoon, everyone. I welcome the media in this remarkable event of Ministry of Electronics and IT. Before starting the question and answer session, I would request the media to follow some general instructions. Please keep your mic on mute. Open it when you are asking the question. प्लीज अपने माइक को म्यूट पे रखिएगा, जब क्वेश्चन पूछना हो तभी आप इसको अनम्यूट कीजिएगा. यू शुड आस्क द क्वेश्चन वन बाय वन, एक साथ नहीं पूछिएगा, जिसको पूछना है सिर्फ वही पूछेगा पहले. Kindly ask the questions related to today's event only, which is Ministry's vision for electronics manufacturing and exports. Without taking much time, I would request my friends from media to ask the questions. सबसे पहले कुछ लोगों ने मुझे already नाम दिए हैं.